David, I was fascinated from the first day I met you about your background. It's unusual for police work and how you got into it. And so if you would tell us that, and then what Greenleaf's essay has to do with your getting this job.
Well, it's had a great deal to do with me getting this job and maybe keeping the job. But I graduated from college, Abilene Christian College, as a matter of fact, with a degree in social work in 1972. And the state of Texas was not hiring social workers at that time, and I was doing manual labor to support my family. I had been referred to the Dallas Police Department to do social work while I was in college, and they said, that's fine, we have some areas you can work with youth. That's what I wanted to do. They said you had to be a police officer, and I said, no, thank you. After about 6 months of manual labor, I gave that some consideration.
You rethought that.
Yeah, it paid more than social work to begin with, and I thought, well, perhaps somewhere down the line my degree will give me an opportunity to serve in another way. As it happens, I became a patrol officer in Dallas. I was promoted to sergeant in '79, and then in 1981 I went to Dallas Police Academy, and I did a man I met at church had some problems that were threatening to his family, and I and some other police officers assisted them for about 3 weeks in an effort to try to protect his family. And after that event, in the mail comes to me this monograph for serving as leader, this essay from Greenleaf, who I'd never heard of. And I remember distinctly sitting down at my desk at the Dallas Police Academy, where I was a basic training sergeant at that time, and I started reading this, and what just jumped out at me is, I know these people. And I said, this is the kind of person I want to be. The philosophy just rang true with me, but I knew there were people around me everywhere that were like this, but I had no idea where to get this, and just the busyness of work, I ended up actually reproducing it and giving it very distinctly to two people who would have an important part of my life and career as it would turn out. Well, I continued to be a student of Greenleaf, talked about it a lot, gave the book as I could reproduce it to people when I thought they deserved it or would understand it. In 1994, we had lived in Carrollton for about 10 years, and the chief of police here retired after 15 years. And I was actually at the FBI National Academy when she called me and said this event had occurred. The chief was going to retire. What I think about this job, and the people at the FBI National Academy encouraged me, and lo and behold, I get to become the police chief of my adopted hometown. But in that process, a lady that I had mentored who'd worked at the Carrollton Police Department, I'd mentored her through some promotional things. I'd met her in 1986 at that time the Southwest Law Enforcement Institute's Command and Management College. She had since had started a private business, but knew the current city manager, Dan Johnson, very well, knew the city, knew the department. And I sat down with her one night at my home, and I said, I want to talk about, the city, what it's like, the city manager. And she says, well, what is your leadership philosophy? So I walked over a bookshelf in our home, in our den, and I pulled out the Serving as Leader. I brought it over and set it down. We're at our kitchen table, and she looks at it, and her eyes get real big. She says, the city manager, Dan Johnson, has that on his bookshelf.
Oh my gosh, what a coincidence.
So as I entered into the interview process, which was a significant assessment, every time I had an opportunity to raise the issue of servant leadership, I did. And of course, these weren't always with the city manager. I also had outlined and basically memorized Principles of Servant Leadership by Stephen Covey. At that time, I didn't know Covey was a student of Greenleaf. Would later find this out and sit at his feet at the Greenleaf conferences. But so in the last interview with the city manager, a number of other city managers from the area, I was asked that same question. And with Dan Johnson sitting at the other end of the table, he asked me what my leadership philosophy was. And I said, my philosophy is based upon Robert Greenleaf's The Servant as Leader. And his eyes got big. and it began a conversation there. And as he interviewed me, that became and continued to interview me personally, one-on-one, that was coming up in the conversation. And when he gives me the job, after he hires me, within a couple of weeks, he calls me into his office and he hands to me all of the current published writings of Greenleaf and bound.
Wow.
And I really didn't know that much about the Greenleaf Center,
yes.
The Center for Applied Ethics. And this was just an eye-opener for me.
Yes.
And then within a few months, before I had actually been here a year as the police chief, the conference in '95 in Indianapolis comes up, and about 2 weeks out, he says, "I'm going to this conference. I want you to go with me." And that was a life-changing and professional-changing
Yes.
opportunity for me. That's where I had the opportunity to meet you, Jack Lowe, and Bob Ferguson, and many wonderful people of TD Industries all of you became mentors to me, and as it's turned out, you've become mentors to many of the people in our agency. So when I think about the servant as leader, my enthusiasm for it is twofold. One is a personal philosophy that rang true to my heart, and in my mind, it was something that was at the center of other people I knew in law enforcement, and it gave an opportunity to identify those things for them within their persona, within their philosophical construct, so that they might apply them. Many times you can't replicate what you can identify. I loved it when Peter Singh said at a conference we were both at the Heart of Business conference in Austin. He said,
Yes.
he says, some people believe you can describe what you see, but he says you can only see what you can describe.
Right.
And so, and I use that frequently when teaching that particular quote. In fact, nearly every time I teach this course, because you have to be able to identify those characteristics so you can replicate them. It's not that you're going to do them every day, because we're imperfect people, as Greenleaf points out. So the goal is to strive to do those things as you can. So that, personally, that was important to me, and professionally it was important to me because it actually gave me a good foundation for rolling out business practices that are done in such a way that people are more accepting of change. And the Center for Servant Leadership gave me exposure to so many different authors, so many different thinkers, writers, speakers, and I have used those people as resources, and their good minds, their good thoughts as they've reflected on servant leadership. Larry Spears' anthologies that have been published, and they're wonderful reflections and give you a different perspective of how servant leadership is applied in different contexts and how people feel about it. So it's been a big part of my career, and I get excited about it, and I really appreciate you for being a big part of that.
Thank you.